Breaking news that has the internet absolutely buzzing. Meghan Markle and Prince Harry have been caught red-handed living a lifestyle they simply cannot afford, and the receipts are damning. The Daily Mail just dropped an explosive investigation revealing that a 70-something cosmetics billionaire named Victoria Jackson has been secretly bankrolling the Sussex lifestyle for years. We're talking multiple luxury mansions, a private Falcon jet, and access to a level of wealth that makes their Montecito mortgage look like pocket change. Here's where it gets absolutely wild. This woman has been loaning them her Upper East Side brownstone in New York, her Beverly Hills mansion, and her Montecito estate, complete with micro-pigs that Archie and Lilibet apparently love. Sources are now confirming that Harry and Meghan habitually stay at these properties when they have business in various cities, which is a polite way of saying they're living rent-free in someone else's homes because their own just isn't cutting it. But the private jet situation? That's where the hypocrisy reaches stratospheric levels. Victoria Jackson has been lending the couple her Falcon private jet for trips, saving them hundreds of thousands of dollars and allowing them to travel with what they call enhanced security. Let that sink in for a moment. These are the same two people who lecture the world about climate change, carbon footprints, and environmental responsibility. Harry literally partnered with organizations promoting ecotourism and sustainable travel. Meghan has given speeches about protecting the planet for future generations. And yet, behind closed doors, they're jetting around on borrowed private planes like the rules don't apply to them. The pattern here is staggering. First, it was Elton John loaning them his private jet and his French villa. Then it was Tyler Perry offering up his Los Angeles mansion with full security during their royal exit. George and Amal Clooney provided hideaway properties. Now it's Victoria Jackson stepping in as the latest wealthy enabler, keeping their champagne dreams afloat on a beer budget reality. A well-connected source put it brutally: the houses are unbelievable, and they don't have to pay at all, which is appealing. Translation: Harry and Meghan are professional house guests with expensive taste and insufficient funds. What makes this even more mortifying is that insiders are whispering the same thing they've said about every other benefactor. At some point, Meghan and Harry always wear out their welcome. They use it too much, too often. The generosity runs dry when the hosts realize they're being used as props in the Sussex spectacle rather than appreciated as genuine friends. But the real scandal isn't just the private jets or the borrowed mansions. It's what this reveals about their desperate financial situation and their complete inability to fund the lifestyle Meghan demands. Because while they were living large on someone else's dime, their latest PR catastrophe was detonating across the internet. Victoria Jackson isn't just any wealthy friend. This woman is the queen of cosmetics with a portfolio that would make most billionaires jealous. Her Upper East Side brownstone in New York features an interior glass elevator and a kitchen with oak worktops that reportedly cost more than most people's entire homes. The property is so luxurious that when Meghan sat down for her Harper's Bazaar interview, a house manager announced her entrance like she was arriving at a palace, introducing the Duchess of Sussex. Except there was no one else there, and she's not actually a real duchess anymore in any meaningful way. But New York is just the beginning. Victoria's Beverly Hills mansion serves as another base for the couple, with sources confirming they stayed there just 2 weeks before controversially showing up at Kris Jenner's 70th birthday party. That appearance, by the way, caused its own firestorm when Meghan chose to party with billionaires instead of wearing a poppy for Remembrance Day weekend. Priorities, right? Then there's the crown jewel, Victoria's Montecito estate. This property is so spectacular that Meghan chose to hold her 34th birthday party there in 2021 rather than at her own $9 million home. Think about that for a second. You have your own mansion in one of the most exclusive zip codes in America, but you'd rather celebrate your birthday at someone else's house because it's that much better. The following year, Meghan met an interviewer from The Cut magazine at Victoria's property instead of inviting them to her own home. The kids, Archie and Lilibet, allegedly love visiting because Victoria keeps micro-pigs on the property, which sounds charming until you realize it's just another detail highlighting how often they're camping out at someone else's estate. A source spelled it out bluntly: Victoria's houses make their place in Montecito look like a prison or a beach shack. It suits them for security purposes, sure, but let's be honest about what's really appealing here. The houses are unbelievable, and they don't have to pay at all. That's the bottom line. Harry and Meghan get to live like billionaires without actually being billionaires, all courtesy of a generous septuagenarian who's become their latest financial lifeline. Remember, this is the same pattern we've seen before. Tyler Perry had enough. Elton John eventually stepped back. These wealthy benefactors start out charmed by the idea of helping the renegade royals, but the novelty wears off when they realize Harry and Meghan treat generosity like an entitlement rather than a gift. They're not staying at these properties occasionally for special events. They're habitually using them, turning Victoria Jackson's real estate empire into their personal hotel chain. And here's where it gets even more absurd. While Meghan was bouncing between borrowed mansions and riding in loaned private jets, she was simultaneously trying to launch herself as a lifestyle guru, teaching people about authenticity and living within your means. Let's talk about those private jets, because this is where the hypocrisy reaches truly breathtaking levels. Victoria Jackson has been loaning Harry and Meghan her Falcon private jet for trips, and we're not talking about the occasional emergency flight. This has been a regular arrangement that's saving them hundreds of thousands of dollars per trip, while allowing them to maintain what they call enhanced security. The math here is staggering. A single private jet flight from Los Angeles to New York can cost anywhere from $50,000 to $100,000. Multiply that across multiple trips per year, and you're looking at savings that would make anyone's accountant weep with joy. But here's what makes this absolutely infuriating. Harry has positioned himself as an eco-warrior. He's partnered with sustainable travel initiatives. He's given speeches about protecting the environment for future generations. Meghan has lectured about carbon footprints and climate responsibility. They've both signed on to campaigns promoting commercial flight and reducing aviation emissions. And yet the moment the cameras are off and the speeches are done, they're climbing aboard borrowed private jets that produce more carbon emissions in one flight than the average person generates in an entire year. This isn't even the first time they've been caught in this exact hypocrisy. Remember when Elton John had to publicly defend lending them his private jet after they were photographed jetting off to his villa in France? He actually released a statement explaining he'd offset the carbon emissions, as if that somehow made it acceptable for two climate activists to fly private. Then there was Tyler Perry's generosity when they first fled to California, providing not just his mansion but access to his private aviation as well. The Clooneys reportedly helped facilitate private travel arrangements too. The pattern is unmistakable. Harry and Meghan have cultivated a network of ultra-wealthy friends specifically to fund a lifestyle they cannot afford on their own. A source close to the situation explained it perfectly. Harry and Meghan are always looking for somebody to fund their lifestyle because they simply cannot do it themselves. Meghan wants to act like a billionaire on barely a millionaire salary, and so she is constantly trying to find somebody who's just a sucker, somebody who is interested in giving them homes and private jets and all these sorts of things. But here's the problem with being professional charity cases. Eventually, every benefactor realizes they're being used. Elton John has noticeably cooled on the friendship. Tyler Perry distanced himself after his own misconduct allegations surfaced, and Harry and Meghan immediately turned their backs on him. These wealthy enablers start out thinking they're helping a noble cause, supporting a couple who stepped away from royal constraints. But the reality becomes clear pretty quickly. They're not friends, they're ATM machines with wings. And now Victoria Jackson is learning what all the others learned before her. Generosity has a limit, especially when it's being exploited rather than appreciated. While Meghan was living her borrowed billionaire fantasy, her latest attempt at relevance was imploding spectacularly across the internet. The Harper's Bazaar cover shoot, which was supposed to be her grand comeback moment, turned into a masterclass in public relations disaster. The reception wasn't just bad, it was catastrophically, historically, embarrassingly terrible. And the numbers don't lie. The Netflix trailer for her holiday special racked up 34,000 dislikes compared to a measly 1,900 likes. That ratio is so lopsided that even YouTube's algorithm probably did a double take. We're talking about a rejection rate that most content creators would consider career-ending. This wasn't a mixed reception or polarizing content. This was the internet collectively pressing the reject button with both hands. Social media absolutely eviscerated the shoot. One viral tweet from Meghan Markle captured the mood perfectly. Psycho Meghan Markle is always cosplaying someone else. That's someone else. Victoria Beckham, who just happens to be Meghan's enemy after their friendship spectacularly combusted over leaked stories and betrayed confidences. The comparisons were brutal and unavoidable. There was Meghan, draped in high fashion, trying desperately to channel Posh Spice's effortless elegance and falling flat on her face. Another tweet really twisted the knife. One is a British legend, the other is Meghan Markle. The internet can be savage, but sometimes it's also painfully accurate. The desperation behind the scenes was palpable. Within 48 hours of the cover dropping, Meghan's team flooded social media with behind-the-scenes footage, clearly trying to control the damage. There was Meghan, giggling and playing coy on set, while some sycophantic staff member told her she was a 10 out of 10. The editor came over for a hug. Everyone was so supportive. Everyone was so impressed, except literally no one watching believed any of it for a second. But here's where it got truly mortifying. Buried in the Harper's Bazaar profile was a detail that sent the internet into overdrive. Writer Caitlin Greenidge casually noted that staff announced Meghan as Meghan, Duchess of Sussex, everywhere she enters a room. Not sometimes. Not for formal events. Everywhere. One source sniped with barely concealed contempt. If there's a doorway, a hallway, or a yoga mat, trust me, someone is whispering the title first. The article was supposed to be glossy and glowing, a puff piece designed to rehabilitate Meghan's battered image. Instead, that one razor-sharp line cut through all the PR polish like a dagger. Fashion insiders started cackling. One editor joked, "Forget Vogue, the only cover she wants is the one where she gets introduced as the Duchess on loop." The mockery was merciless, and absolutely deserved. And then someone revealed something even more ridiculous. The title obsession didn't stop at photo shoots or fancy events. Meghan allegedly demands the Duchess treatment at the gym and Starbucks. Yes, you read that correctly, Starbucks. Rob Schotter, celebrity journalist and royal commentator, dropped an absolute bombshell that had the internet cackling for days. According to his sources, Meghan Markle insists on being introduced as the Duchess of Sussex, not just at formal events or photo shoots, but at the gym and at Starbucks. Let that mental image sink in for a moment. Picture Meghan walking into her local coffee shop, and before she can order her oat milk latte, someone has to announce her royal title to the baristas. It's so absurd it almost sounds like satire, except multiple sources are confirming it's exactly what happens. Shooter wrote that if there's a doorway, a hallway, or a yoga mat, trust me, someone is whispering the title first. One source sniped with barely disguised contempt that Meghan cares more about her title than any cover shoot she's rumored to chase. The profile was glossy and glowing until that one razor-sharp line cut through the PR polish like a dagger. Fashion insiders started cackling. One editor joked, "Forget Vogue, the only cover she wants is the one where she gets introduced as the Duchess on loop." This is peak diva behavior, and it exposes everything wrong with Meghan's approach to public life. She spent exactly 18 months as a working member of the royal family. 18 months. She has now spent triple that time outside the royal family, living in California, complaining about royal constraints, and positioning herself as a Hollywood entrepreneur. And yet she clings to that title with a desperation that borders on pathological. She insists on the royal ciphers on literally everything. Her logo, her brand, her jam jars for heaven's sake, all feature royal-adjacent imagery. Here's what makes this so embarrassing. Real royals don't behave this way. Catherine, the Princess of Wales, doesn't demand her title be announced when she walks into a room for private engagements. When she visited the Kemp family to film mental health content, she offered to remove her shoes because everyone else had taken theirs off. No announcements, no fanfare, just genuine down-to-earth respect for other people's homes. That's what actual royalty looks like. It's the balance between elevated status and human connection. But Meghan, she embodies the worst stereotypes of what people think royals are. Demanding, entitled, obsessed with hierarchy and protocol when it suits her image. Insiders are speculating that her insistence on using the title everywhere is strategic. She wants it so deeply embedded in the public consciousness that when Prince William inevitably strips it away, there will be worldwide uproar. She's trying to make herself too associated with the Duchess brand for anyone to separate the two. But here's the problem with that strategy. People still call her Meghan Markle. They always have, and they always will. Just look at Catherine. Everyone knows her maiden name was Middleton, and it stuck far more than Princess of Wales ever did. Meghan can demand the Duchess title at Starbucks all she wants. The world has already decided who she really is. In a desperate attempt to flood the zone and distract from the Harper's Bazaar catastrophe, Meghan released what she clearly believed would be a game-changing social media moment. A behind-the-scenes video showcasing her entertaining skills, her eye for presentation, her gift for making guests feel special. Instead, the internet watched in horror as Meghan Markle confirmed what many had suspected all along. She is genuinely one of the laziest hosts in the entire world. The video was supposed to demonstrate her breakfast hosting prowess for holiday gatherings. What it actually demonstrated was a woman with more money than sense, with an entire staff at her disposal, who just doesn't want to do a single thing for anyone. Let's break down this masterclass in minimum effort entertaining. First, Meghan proudly announced that if you don't want to make pancakes, don't make pancakes. You just get the ones that are in the freezer section. Frozen pancakes. Pancakes are literally one of the easiest things to make from scratch. Flour, eggs, milk, baking powder. You can whip up a batch in less time than it takes to preheat an oven for frozen ones. But wait, it gets better, or worse, depending on your perspective. Next came the quiche revelation. Meghan's revolutionary hosting tip? Buy a quiche from the grocery store, stick it in the oven, and leave a little note that says, "Morning, help yourselves, quiche is in the oven." That's it. That's the big idea. A note. Not homemade food, not even reheated with care. Just a passive-aggressive piece of paper directing your guests to serve themselves, whatever you couldn't be bothered to actually prepare. Then came the moment that had everyone screaming at their screens. Meghan picked up a strawberry and, with the gravitas of someone revealing a state secret, cut it in half. She actually presented this as entertaining advice. Cutting strawberries in half. That's the level of insight we're working with here. revolutionary, groundbreaking. Absolutely nobody in the history of hosting has ever thought to slice fruit before Meghan Markle graced us with this wisdom. She used fancy vintage serving dishes that she'd gotten from a vintage store, which sounds charming until you realize how completely impractical they are for actual hosting. When you're feeding a large group, you want easy-to-clean, functional servingware, not delicate antiques that will take forever to wash and probably can't go in the dishwasher. But Meghan doesn't think about things like cleanup or practicality because Meghan doesn't actually do any of the work. She has staff for that. The truly tragic part, Meghan genuinely believes this makes her accessible and relatable. She thinks buying frozen food and serving it with a note somehow demonstrates that she understands regular people. What it actually demonstrates is that she has no clue what real hosting looks like. She has no family to host. She has no real friends to impress. This is a woman cosplaying domesticity with all the authenticity of a staged Instagram photo. Behind the scenes, something remarkable was happening. According to excellent sources close to the situation, Prince Harry did something he rarely does anymore. He stood his ground with Meghan and forced her to confront a reality she's been desperately avoiding. He made her sit down and watch Prince William's interview with Eugene Levy, and the tension in that room must have been absolutely suffocating. Meghan didn't want to watch it. She can't stand Prince William because he's the one person who never fell for her act. He was immune to her charms from the very beginning. He saw through the performance, recognized the manipulation, and made it clear that she wasn't going to play games with the future of the monarchy. That immunity infuriated her then, and it terrifies her now, because William holds all the power, and Harry knows it. In that interview, William talked about change coming to the monarchy. Not vague, someday change. Specific, intentional transformation. He's planning to shrink the whole operation down, streamline the succession, eliminate unnecessary titles, and this is where Harry finally gets something that Meghan refuses to accept. When William becomes king, and he will, those Sussex titles are gone. The royal ciphers, the Duchess branding, the entire identity Meghan has built her post-royal life around, it all disappears with the stroke of a pen. Harry understands this because he's watched it happen before. His uncle Andrew went from His Royal Highness the Duke of York to simply Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. All the titles, all the medals, all the associations with the royal family wiped away. That's the future William is building, and it's a future where Harry and Meghan are completely irrelevant. No titles to trade on, no royal connection to monetize, just two people who walked away and burned every bridge behind them. This is why Harry forced Meghan to watch that interview. He's trying to make her understand that her strategy of railroading the Duchess title into public consciousness isn't going to work. She thinks if she uses it everywhere, demands it at every opportunity, plasters it across every brand and product, that somehow people will be outraged when William takes it away. She's imagining worldwide protests defending poor Meghan, who had her title stolen by the mean Prince of Wales. But Harry knows better. He knows that when William acts, the public will support him. They'll see it as cleaning house, removing people who disrespected the institution and cashed in on royal connections while simultaneously trashing the family. There won't be outrage, there will be applause. According to sources, Meghan's response to watching the interview was predictable. She immediately pivoted to suggesting they do something similar. Why can't we sit down and tell our side of the story? Why can't you do what William's doing? But they already tried that. The Netflix documentary, the Oprah interview. Spare, they've told their story repeatedly, and nobody cares anymore. The well is dry. Harry's waking up to reality. Meghan's still living in denial, and that gap between them is growing wider every single day. Radar Online isn't holding back anymore. Their latest headline cuts straight to the bone. The real reason Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's marriage is an empty sham. Constant drama and criticism are the only things holding them together. Sources close to the couple are painting a picture of a relationship that exists not because of genuine affection or shared values, but because they're trapped together by the chaos they've created around themselves. One longtime friend, and considering Meghan's track record, that phrase feels like an oxymoron, described their relationship as powered by the storms around them and not much else. There have been periods when the turmoil never seemed to stop, and strangely, it kept them united. They've learned to function within the chaos. Constant drama and mayhem seem to be all that is tying them together at the moment. Think about how deeply dysfunctional that is. They're not bonded by love or mutual respect or shared dreams. They're bonded by being under attack, real or imagined, and feeling like they're the only ones the other can depend on. Another source was even more brutal. They described Harry and Meghan as two naughty children in a playground coming together to revel in their mischief, but who don't really like anything about each other. That line hit different after watching Harry's face during the Netflix series when Meghan faked that curtsy on the couch. Remember that moment? His expression wasn't amused or charmed. It was horrified. That's not the face of a man watching his beloved wife tell a funny story. That's the face of someone realizing they've made a catastrophic mistake. The insider continued, there have been long stretches when it has genuinely felt like Harry and Meghan versus everyone else. Harry has taken a fiercely protective stance towards her, largely because Meghan is hit with an enormous amount of hostility, especially on the internet. but they've developed a pattern of separately and together creating chaos for themselves and others, then reveling in it and being brought close by their misbehavior and betrayals of the royal family. It's codependency disguised as partnership, toxicity masquerading as loyalty. Radar claims that Harry and Meghan are now drifting apart due to his desire to return to the UK and reunite with the royal family. Harry desperately misses being liked. He misses walking into a room and having people genuinely pleased to see him, rather than calculating what they can get from him or how they can avoid him. And he's starting to realize that doesn't happen very often when he stands next to Meghan. Their multi-million-dollar Netflix partnership is pulling them in different directions. Sources warn of a growing divide, with the couple pursuing completely separate projects that highlight their differences and show what dramatically separate lives they are leading. Meghan is supposedly building a Hollywood production empire, which is a generous way to describe one poorly scripted reality show that people would rather watch parodied on TikTok. Meanwhile, Harry is increasingly focused on philanthropy and repairing his ties with his family, or at least that's what he's telling himself while he cashes huge checks to speak at real estate conventions in Canada. Royal biographer Hugo Vickers said what many people have been thinking but were too polite to say out loud. When asked about the Sussex marriage and where it's headed, he delivered a prediction that sent shockwaves through royal watching circles. People usually act in character, and they usually act on form. I hate to say it, but her form is that she dumped her father, she dumped her first husband, she dumped her Canadian chef lover, she dumped Jessica Mulroney. She then dumped the entire British royal family. So who's going to be next for the chop? I think inevitably probably Prince Harry. Let that sink in for a moment. This isn't tabloid speculation or internet gossip. This is a respected royal historian looking at Meghan's documented pattern of behavior and drawing the only logical conclusion. She will eventually decide she doesn't need Harry anymore, and when that moment comes, he'll be discarded just like everyone else who stopped being useful to her narrative. Hugo continued with an even more chilling prediction. She will probably somehow put him in the wrong so that she can say that she's a wronged woman and he's just behaved like all the others. I don't think she ever admits that she is wrong about anything. This is textbook Meghan. Rewrite the history, position yourself as the victim, make sure everyone knows you were betrayed, rather than being the betrayer. It's the same playbook she's used with every relationship that's ended. Her father Thomas gave her everything, paid for her education, supported her dreams, worked as a lighting director to fund her private school. The moment he became inconvenient and made a mistake with staged paparazzi photos, she cut him off completely, never spoke to him again, didn't invite him to her wedding, denied him access to his grandchildren. Gone. Trevor Engelson, her first husband, supported her career when she was a struggling actress. The moment she got her break on Suits and bigger opportunities emerged, the marriage ended. She literally mailed her wedding rings back to him, shipped them back like returning unwanted merchandise. The Canadian chef Corey Vitiello was supposedly her great love until someone better came along. Then he was erased from her story like he never existed. Jessica Mulroney was her best friend, the one who helped with the royal wedding, who supported her through the transition. One allegation of insensitivity, whether fair or not, and Jessica was gone. No second chances, no loyalty. And the royal family? She spent 18 months as a working royal, decided it wasn't serving her ambitions quickly enough, and convinced Harry to burn it all down. She didn't just leave quietly. She scorched the earth with Oprah interviews and Netflix documentaries, and Harry's memoir attacking the very institution that gave her global fame. Sources close to the situation fear that if Harry and Meghan do divorce, she'll deploy the same tell-all interview strategy. She'll sit down with someone sympathetic, probably Oprah again, and paint herself as the victim of yet another man who failed to live up to her standards. And Harry, who already gave up his family, his country, and his reputation for her, will be left with absolutely nothing. So let's bring this full circle. Victoria Jackson is just the latest in a long line of wealthy enablers, bankrolling a lifestyle that Harry and Meghan simply cannot sustain on their own. The borrowed mansions, the private jets, the access to billionaire-level luxury while living on what barely qualifies as millionaire income. It's all propped up by other people's generosity, and history shows us exactly how this story ends. They wear out their welcome. The benefactor realizes they're being used rather than appreciated, and Harry and Meghan move on to the next sucker willing to fund their champagne dreams. Elton John had enough. Tyler Perry stepped back. The Clooneys went quiet. Now it's Victoria Jackson's turn to learn what all the others learned. Generosity has limits, especially when it's treated as entitlement rather than privilege. Sources say that Harry and Meghan always wear out their welcome because they do it too much too often. They don't borrow a home for a special occasion. They habitually use these properties like they own them. They don't accept a private jet ride as an extraordinary gift. They expect it as standard treatment. And while they're living this borrowed billionaire lifestyle, their actual careers are in absolute free fall. The Harper's Bazaar shoot became a laughingstock with 34,000 dislikes versus 1,900 likes. The breakfast hosting video confirmed she's the laziest entertainer in Hollywood. The Netflix show is something people would rather watch parodied on TikTok than actually stream. Their favorability ratings are in the toilet. Harry sits at 28% approval, while Meghan languishes at 20%, only slightly better than disgraced Prince Andrew. Everything they touch turns to failure, and it's reaching a boiling point. The professional separation is now undeniable. Harry's doing solo trips, Meghan's launching solo projects. They're living separate lives held together only by the chaos they've created and the Sussex titles they're both terrified of losing. Because without those titles, what's left? Two people who burned every bridge, alienated every friend, and destroyed every relationship in pursuit of fame and fortune that never materialized. Meghan wanted to be a billionaire power player in Hollywood. Instead, she's teaching people to cut strawberries in half and buy frozen pancakes. Harry wanted to be taken seriously as a philanthropist and changemaker. Instead, he's cashing checks at real estate conventions and begging for security funding he can't afford. Their brand is toxic, their reputation is shattered, and the only thing keeping them financially afloat is a 70-something cosmetics mogul who's learning in real time what it means to be friends with Harry and Meghan. So here's the question everyone's asking. Will they make it another year? Can a marriage built on chaos, drama, and mutual victimhood survive when the money runs out and the enablers disappear? Drop your thoughts below, like, subscribe, and stay tuned. The next video is waiting, and you won't believe what's coming next.